Before you say anything, I've had to move. We had a little bit of a flood in my place and now works are happening and we had to move out for a few weeks, so I'll be back middle of next month. But for now, for the foreseeable future, this will be the new background. And now on to what brought us here. Guys, there's a lot of streaming services out there, major ones. And it was my belief that Apple TV was one of the few prestige streaming platforms out there. Not only do they see their shows to the very bitter end, even if viewership falls, but they also invest the fuck out of their asses in every single show they produce. And I'll catch myself watching trailers and clips of insane TV shows only to find out that it's like season 3 of an existing show that's been airing for the last 3 years. Like, Apple does not market their own shows. And it's kind of like, they'll fuck about with any story and just simply not tell anyone. But also, Apple TV operates on a loss of $1 billion per year. Apple TV is for the viewers. They don't care about making money because they make the money elsewhere. They are really in it just for the entertainment value, which is great. Or so I thought. So I found out this show starring Kerry Washington, Elizabeth Moss, and Kate Mara, called Imperfect Women. Imperfect Women follows an investigation that dives deep into the murder of a wealthy woman and all the dark secrets uncovered about her life. So I watched it, and wow, what a waste of time. This show has all the staples of the channel. It's a limited series, so we know that by the end, there's not going to be any bullshit cliffhangers or unresolved plot points. It's a murder mystery split across timelines where we uncover layers of the truth as the story develops. But most importantly, it's directionless. It's pointless. And it makes very little sense. And it has a star-studded cast fighting for their lives with a very mediocre script. Plot twists that lack the twist or the plot, reveals you may have missed because you fell asleep during those long meandering conversations that go nowhere, and a team of detectives that seem as bored with this show as I was. Like, the characters are the representation of the disgruntled viewer who just wants this wrapped up ASAP. Plot lines plucked straight out of a Lifetime TV special movie starring Lisa Rinna. A-listers proving you're never too good to do bad. This was a waste of my time, but I won't let it be a waste of yours. I am determined to make this as entertaining and exciting as possible. So if you are excited and entertained as possible, then go ahead and subscribe down below to the channel because you will feel and look so much better right after. Also, get yourself a drink, a snack, sit down, relax right the fuck now. It's a threat. Let's get into it. Guys, the theme of today is women being messy. The story follows a trio of friends, and each of them is holding dark secrets. Our friends are Eleanor, played by Kerry Washington. She comes from money, very wealthy family, and she works as the director of a nonprofit organization, Rescue and Relief. She's not married, but she is living a clandestine affair with one of her employees, a much younger, very attractive man. Next, we have Mary, played by Elizabeth Moss. She is a homemaker, has 3 kids, Marcus, almost an adult, and 2 younger daughters, and is married to Howard, who unfortunately I find extremely attractive. Like this man. Era de manhã, era de tarde, era de noite, era em pé, era deitado, era na casa de banho, era na cozinha, era contra o balcão, era contra as paredes, era no sofá, era na cama, era no chão, era em todo lado e mais algum. Era até as paredes começarem a pingar. But like, as hot as I find him, as soon as he opens his mouth, he's in academia and he is a pompous, pretentious asshole who says things like, "We don't believe in shielding them from grief," when he takes his 2 prepubescent daughters to a funeral. Maybe you should. Maybe you should leave your daughters at home when you go to a funeral. How about that? And lastly, Nancy, played by Kate Mara. A former ballet dancer, Nancy is married to Robert, another very wealthy gentleman. And Nancy doesn't have a job per se, in the traditional sense of having a job and working for a living. She does more like stuff with her husband's money, like throw parties and events and just live a good, comfortable life. And honestly, good for her. And all these women are holding secrets. She's having an affair. She's in love with someone else's husband. And she's a Scientologist. No, I'm just kidding. She's just really boring. And the series opens in an interrogation room. Eleanor is being interrogated by 2 detectives the night they found a body, a day after Eleanor had dinner with the victim. The night before, the girls had dinner together. And it kind of shows that they've been friends since high school because they all treat each other like kids, like they infantilize their friendships so much. They talk about each other like 15 and 14-year-olds talk about their besties. And during these drinks, we find out that Nancy is having an affair with a man named David. And although she has told Eleanor about it because Eleanor is single and she's not necessarily monogamous, she hasn't told Mary because she doesn't want to upset her. But Eleanor is very stern in the condemnation of Nancy's affair. She reminds her how much her husband loves her and how much she loves her husband and that she really needs to end it. She even uses Nancy's own words against her. That time that Nancy explained the difference between love and infatuation. Wow, powerful. Do you want to know the difference? So love fills you up and infatuation dries you up. And then in the middle of the night, Eleanor is woken up by Robert calling her because Nancy hasn't come home yet after dinner and it's like 4 a.m. He wants to call the police immediately, but she dissuades him because she knows that she met up with the guy that she was having an affair with to end it. And if she's not home yet, maybe she's still with him. And in these situations, girl, stay out of it. Mind your own business. Like, just let him call the police and let your friend who's having an affair deal with it. But instead, she convinces him not to call the police because she doesn't want him to find out that she's having an affair, only to get to his house 10 minutes later and confirm that Nancy is having an affair, but don't call the police just yet. Doth not make sense, but it's something that we need to get used to with this show. And just as Eleanor convinces Robert not to call the police show up at his doorstep because they found a body they believe is Nancy's. Eleanor offers to identify the body, and she does, and then is interrogated, and then she heads straight to Mary's to tell her the truth. And Mary then finds out from Eleanor that Nancy was having an affair, and she is so upset that Nancy didn't tell her. Why would she not tell Mary? Why would she keep this a secret? Yes, Mary, you get your fucking priorities straight. So Eleanor starts spending quite a bit of time with Robert at his place, helping him and his daughter Cora grieve through Nancy's passing, through Nancy's death, to the point where even Rob's hot, muscular, lesbian sister, Jill Wagner, hello. You know, I saw her in Lioness Special Ops, and my God, did she look hot. And she's back on a different show, and she still looks like a hot lesbian. I don't know if she is, but you know what? Canon in my head that she's a lesbian in this show, and I love that for her. Even his sister makes a passive-aggressive remark like, "Oh, you're such a good friend for staying with a family for this long. Really good for you." Rich people being passive-aggressive. But Robert's family are all like very gross rich folk. At the funeral, for example, they have the nerve to tell Mary, "I'm so sorry you couldn't find childcare in time for this funeral." Which is the same as saying, take your fucking disgusting Pavo children and Pavo husband back to the sewers you no doubt crawled out of. Working class? More like stinking class. They also had the paper for the funeral made out of linen and rose petals from Nancy's garden. They just went in and plucked her flowers and then crushed them up to use it as a scented component in the fucking paper of the funeral. We don't hate rich people enough. I really don't think that we hate billionaires enough because they are still walking around free, unharmed. It's like, guarantee you that no animal species out there would ever allow billionaires to exist in their system because it just makes no goddamn sense. But here we are, just licking the buttholes of rich people because one day, that could be us. One day I will be a millionaire as well, or a billionaire even, because it's so fucking easy, you know? You just gotta work hard, put in the hours, and never complain. Don't have avocado on toast. Never go out for food. Always cook. And when you're cooking, you need to aim for a loaf of bread and butter, which will last you about a week or two. And that's super cheap. And that's how you save money to one day be a billionaire. You're welcome. Ooh, I hate rich people and their slimy fucking hands so much. The police then arrest an artist called Davide, and I'm gonna be very honest, there's a whole side plot where Nancy met this artist, Davide, and he painted her nude, and she had the painting in her house, and they discover, and it's like, goes nowhere. Unnecessary red herring, but here we are. All of this to say that when Robert finds the painting, he smashes it outside super angry, and Eleanor is like beside herself. She's never seen him this angry. And she confides in Mary. I've never seen him this angry. Whereas Mary is like, actually, that does not surprise me at all. I've always known that he has a temper, especially when he drinks or when he's jealous. It's just that you've never been able to see it because of your crush on him, Eleanor. So as it turns out, Eleanor has a crush on Nancy's husband, Robert. And now that his wife is dead, he's kind of free and single. Messy. Worse than that, both Mary and Nancy kind of knew about it and they just never did anything because it was either so pathetic it would never develop into anything substantial, or maybe Nancy just didn't care enough. She's like, yeah, you can love my husband all you want. I don't really care. And I don't know which one is worse. But then Robert apologizes for his behavior. And then he tells Eleanor that he had plans to go watch the ballet with Nancy because Nancy used to be a ballet dancer and that's one thing that she loves. And Robert is inconsolable because he was supposed to go with her, but now he can't. So he instead invites Eleanor and says that they can go and feel her presence through the art form that she enjoyed. And at first, Eleanor was like, no, think about the optics. It's so bad. She literally just died. But no, it takes like very little to no convincing. And she changes her mind and says, okay, let's go. And the optics could not be worse because this is like 2 days after she died. And look at how they're dressed. Dressed to the nines. I'm not one to really care about the optics because you never know what's going on behind closed doors, but these optics are fucked. So episode 2 rolls in and we get Eleanor's POV of things and her crush on Robert. So it turns out Eleanor met Robert first and it was like love at first sight. She felt an instant connection. But then Nancy walked into the room and she introduced Nancy to Robert and they kind of hit it off and the rest is history. Ooh, that's gotta sting, Eleanor. And when she gets back home, she's confronted by the coworker that she's been sleeping with. And he's like, well, you called me the other night at 9 p.m., but then you only came to my place at 1 a.m. And Eleanor panics straight away. She's like, ooh, my alibi is fucked. So instead, she distracts him with wine and sex. But Eleanor doesn't change and she continues offering her support to Robert and his daughter Cora to the point where Eleanor's brother, Donnie, comes to town to keep an eye on her. Now, if you'll remember, I said that Eleanor comes from a very rich family. And although she is kind of a lone, single director of a nonprofit, the nonprofit is funded by Eleanor's family, her mom, her brother, whoever else. And he's in town to keep an eye on her because she has a tendency to be unpredictable in crisis situations. But worse than that, Eleanor then finds out through Robert that years ago, back when she really had a crush on Robert, Donnie approached Robert and told him that his sister was completely off limits. And that pisses Eleanor off. She's like, what right do you have to control my dating life? And he tells her, Eleanor, that man comes from old money. Old money you can't trust. They are entitled. They think that the world owes them everything and anything. They think they can do whatever they want. And we don't like to play like that. And I got to agree with Donnie. Old money should be outlawed, should be sanctioned out of existence. Old money sucks. But Eleanor is super pissed, and you can tell that it's not about the money. You know, Eleanor has money, Robert has money. It's just that she has really, really bad taste in men. And then, as inevitable as it is for water to be wet, Eleanor and Robert end up sleeping together. But after they do the nasty, and when I say the nasty, they do it on a leather sofa, which somehow feels dirtier and nastier than like a normal bed. But Eleanor wakes up in the middle of the night and she finds a letter that Robert wrote Nancy apologizing for scaring her after he found out about her affair. Now, back to episode 1, Robert had no idea that she was having an affair, but now turns out he did. Eleanor's like, whoa, what the fuck? Did you lie to me? So episode 3, she confronts him and he comes clean. He didn't disclose that he knew about the affair because he knew that that would make him look guilty. So instead he pretended like he had no idea about anything and that he was just worried about his wife not coming back home on time. And it does not make sense because he says that he knew she was on her way to end the affair that night. He knew she was meeting her lover to end the affair. And he waited until 4 a.m. to call someone about his wife's whereabouts. Like, wouldn't you want to like track her or make sure that she's like, it does not make sense. What do you mean you knew she was going to end the affair and you just sat home doing nothing? Don't piss me off. Don't piss me off. Even though it makes absolutely no sense, Eleanor has the love goggles on and she just takes his word at face. I'm drunk. So even though it didn't make any sense, Eleanor just takes his word at face value and moves on. I can't speak. Also, I don't know if you can tell that my dogs are in the background. There's one. There's little Skippy. That's my son. And then my daughter is somewhere under the blankets. She loves the dark. Eleanor does break things off with him because she's now realized that they have crossed a line that they simply cannot uncross. Mary is on her own corner investigating Nancy's death, and she's being very pushy with the police to the point where they have to arrest her for civil unrest because she just won't stop like harassing them with a bunch of evidence that she has found. And honestly, Mary is the only one that's investigating this thoroughly. She's gone through all of the yearbooks and all of the followers to look for Davids. She's collated the list of all of them and handed them to the police, and the police are doing nothing about it, as usual. Another rich people's gala event, and Eleanor drives to Robert's house after, and they end up fucking again, hardcore. And then they just have a little fun by the pool. And Cora, Robert's daughter, catches them. Now, Cora and Eleanor had a really good relationship because Eleanor, Mary, and Nancy are all kind of like aunties of each other's kids. But that's not going to save Eleanor because the next day she finds out that Cora made a video for TikTok exposing the affair that her dead mom's best friend is having with her father. Which is kind of true, kind of sick. It's the optics. Remember, this is like wealthy families, nouveau riche versus old money. Eleanor's brother Donnie is pissed off because he feels like Robert's family is going to throw Eleanor under the bus just to save Robert, which, spoiler alert, they will. And Eleanor does damage control and comes clean with Mary about her affair with Robert. She also tells her about the video and about the letter that she found in Robert's possessions about Nancy being scared of him. But let me remind the audience that Eleanor slept with him after finding the letter. So it's like, why are you bringing it up now if you were okay with it enough to sleep with him again? Eleanor, messy. You're being messy. Ah! Mary's now convinced that Robert did it. Robert killed her, and she wants to go to the police straight away. But Eleanor, for some fucking reason, decides to defend him. She's like, no, he didn't do anything. He's so nice and fine. And Mary's like, whoa, you gotta give it a rest with this obsession. Speaking of obsession, guys, the best movie of the year just dropped. I'm not even joking. It's not a hyperbole. It's called Obsession, and I'm going to make a video about it soon, so I dare you all to go watch it beforehand because we need to have a conversation. And if you still have doubts, 2024, I said The Substance was the best film of the year, and I was right. And last year, I said it was Sinners, and I was also right. And this year, it's Obsession. 3 years in a row. Horror movies topping the charts in my brain. In my mind. Ooh, I love horror. Eleanor and Mary argue, and Mary tells her that she's just living a fucking fantasy where she's fucking her dead best friend's husband. But Eleanor is like, why are you being so self-righteous when your own marriage started off as an affair? Guys, these girls are insane because it turns out Mary's marriage also started off in an affair. This is so messy. Mary had an affair with Howard when he was married to someone else, and then they got married. So you know what, Mary? Don't go throwing around stones. Eleanor is then accosted by the detective outside the house who doesn't believe that Nancy was having an affair because they haven't been able to find any evidence of it. So they are just deciding that Eleanor and Mary lied. The detectives in this show are like particularly useless, and I think it's so funny because they're not just useless, they actively go against their own investigation because they just can't be bothered to do their jobs. And I think that's beautiful. Robert then cuts Eleanor out of his life at the advice of his family because he needs to distance himself from scandals, and he even tells her to her face, there's no we. He also asks for the letter back, but Eleanor grows a backbone and says, fuck you and fuck your sobriety. I can smell the whiskey on your breath. And honestly, I wish this was a serve, but Eleanor has been debasing herself so much that this is barely a keeping your dignity kind of moment. She ends up sharing the letter with her brother Donnie because now she is officially done with Robert and whatever crush she had on him. And the story that she gives her lawyers is that at 9 o'clock she texted her lover, but then Marcus, Mary's son, who's had some issues with the law and gambling and drugs, he's a kid, called her because he needed bailing out. He owed some bookies some money and he was stuck in their house, so Eleanor drove to that place, paid off his bookie, and drove him home. And that's why she texted her lover at 9 p.m., but only got to his place at 1 a.m. So she wasn't killing Nancy, she was helping Mary's son. And I think that's beautiful. But it's also revealed that the night of Nancy's murder, as they were leaving the restaurant/bar, Nancy begged Eleanor to go with her to break things off with her lover. And Eleanor was so pissed off at the fact that Nancy would even dare to cheat on such a perfect husband that Eleanor is also in love with that she says, no, I'm not going with you. And Nancy pled with her. She begged her for help. She said, "It's not that simple. Please, please, please come with me." And Eleanor just kicked her out of the car. And it was bad. And now Eleanor feels guilty, as she fucking should, because if she had gone with Nancy, Nancy would be alive. Or they'd both be dead, which is also a very real possibility. And then Mary shows up at Eleanor's doorstep and says, "I know who David is." This is only episode 3. And in episode 4, we switch POVs. Chapter 2, Nancy. So Nancy had a rough upbringing. She danced ballet, but at home, her stepfather abused her. And it was thanks to Robert's money and power that she was able to escape that life of hers. And ever since, she has organized the New Year's party where she almost treats it as like a power statement, a celebration of her new life, and an affirmation to never go back to where she came from. And before anyone says that she was a gold digger, she wasn't. She genuinely loved her husband, and her husband loved her. But 18 years of marriage changes things, and if at first they were super infatuated with each other and couldn't keep their hands off each other, now they're super distant. And Robert just makes passive-aggressive remarks about how much money she's been spending on these parties and how it's gonna have to stop. And it was at the most recent party, the last one that Nancy threw before her death, that everything went wrong. First, her husband was super distant. Then her daughter chastised her for not being super present in her life. She then kept noticing Robert and his father and sister whispering in the corner, either talking about Nancy or Nancy's future in the family. And her fears of being ousted by the family then get confirmed when she has 2 interactions with Robert's father and Robert's sister, and they both make very ominous remarks about her future and about her spending at these parties, making it seem like she's not going to be around for long. Robert, on the other hand, completely ices her out at the party, only giving her attention when she offers to blow him. Wow. And then she ends up finding some emails about a divorce attorney having been contacted, and she starts spiraling. She becomes convinced that he's going to divorce her. He's not talking to her. Her daughter's not talking to her either. And she ends up flirting with this really hot waiter called David. Oh. And then she has an argument with her daughter in front of the entire party and ends up slapping her out of desperation, trying to control her, unable to. And then flashbacks reveal that Nancy's mom tried to kill her when she found out that her husband, Nancy's stepfather, was sleeping with her. Her words were, "You think you're a victim? Well, you're not. You think I'm stupid? Well, I'm not." And then she drove full speed into a wall. Nancy didn't die, but she was left heavily scarred, emotionally and physically. And that kind of explains why she's feeling so inadequate raising her own daughter, Cora. But one notable thing that happened during the party was Mary asked Nancy for help. Mary's husband, Howard, was being made redundant in his teaching job, and she asked Nancy if there was any way of including him in this upcoming ballet production that Nancy was organizing with her husband's money. And Nancy, being the great friend that she is, introduces Howard to the director of the ballet production. And after the party's over, Nancy is completely shunned by her husband and her daughter, and in a moment of desperation, she reaches out to her stepfather on Instagram. His name is Scott, and he's a piece of shit. And then Howard shows up, and he thanks her for getting him a job, and then jokes about how the director of the ballet called him David instead of Howard, probably mistaking him for the waiter. Nancy laughs it off and says, "Ha ha ha, he always calls me Louise no matter how many times I correct him." And from then on, it becomes an inside joke that they call each other Louise and David. So remember when I said that she was having an affair with someone else's husband? With friends like this, who needs enemies? This is like the best friend group ever. Eleanor is in love with Robert, who's married to Nancy, who's having an affair with Howard, who's married to Mary. And in episode 5, Robert remains super distant from his wife, even disparaging her work as that volunteer thing. Wow. Piece of shit. And he's no longer sober. He's been drinking in secret. So Nancy begins working on the ballet production and takes Howard with her. And Howard is this pompous, pretentious asswipe who thinks every word out of his mouth is a gift from the gods themselves. And his presence irks everyone, Nancy included, at first. And it's very clear that though Nancy is trying really hard to work on this ballet production, the director doesn't really want her input or her ideas. He just wants her money, or her husband's money, to fund the production and shut the fuck up. Then Scott, her stepfather, starts calling her incessantly after she reached out, and although she regrets it, the genie is now out of the bottle. In all these factors, her husband seemingly wanting to divorce her, her daughter not talking to her, Eleanor sucking the shit out of Robert's asshole anytime he treats Nancy like shit, and the director of the ballet production literally throwing Nancy's ideas in the trash before even looking at them, all create a perfect storm of circumstances for Nancy and Howard to one night stay late at the theater together with a bottle of wine, and one thing leads to another, and they fuck. And it's an interesting dynamic between these couples because Robert has financially helped Mary and Howard through many circumstances and challenges in their lives. And it's almost like Howard feels emasculated by it. And as retaliation, he wants to sleep with Robert's wife to somehow assert himself as the male alpha in the situation, which is just loser behavior. But Howard is a fucking loser. So there's that. And against her better judgment, she starts having sex with him on a regular basis. Until sometime later, Nancy finds out that her husband was actually in a lot of trouble with his company, with his sister and his dad, because he made a really bad financial decision. And then they had to rework a bunch of stocks and shares to cover up the mistake and fix it. And that's why Robert was being so distant. Because then they get home and Robert literally breaks down in tears, apologizing to Nancy for being so distant these past few months. But he's just been trying so hard to fix this without worrying her that he had even looked into divorce attorneys to, if need be, protect Nancy from the situation, separation of assets, etc., etc. So he was never planning on leaving her. If anything, he was petrified that she would leave him instead. And this information hits Nancy like a runaway train because suddenly she's realizing, holy shit, I just cheated on my husband for no reason. I distrusted him and I shouldn't have. So she throws herself into his arms and they reconcile. Or so they thought. So the night of the opera, Nancy breaks things off with Howard. But Howard doesn't take it so well. He threatens to tell Robert because Robert has the right to know who he's married to. And she tells him, who would ever believe that I would sleep with someone like you? Iconic. And you've probably been thinking ever since you found out that David is Howard and Howard was sleeping with Nancy, it's got to be him that killed her. But also, it's so obvious that they would reveal this in episode 4 that it's got to be someone else, right? That night, they get home and Robert finds out that Nancy is having an affair with someone. He flips out, gets super aggressive, and Nancy leaves the house in distress, scared. Episode 6, and we switch to Mary's POV. How the hell did she find out who David is? Let's get into Scientology, kids. For some reason, Mary does the narration of herself in the third person, and I think it's so camp because she had a thing for storytelling. So Mary was a TA for Howard in university, and Howard was married. He had a wife, and then Mary started sleeping with him. And eventually he divorced his wife and ended up with her, and they had 3 kids. And she explains how back then she wasn't ashamed that she wanted him. Even though she knew that he was married, she didn't care. And back when he divorced his ex-wife, he made it sound like she was super unhinged and crazy and had attempted to take her own life by slitting her wrists. And Mary, as it turns out, was jealous of Nancy because she understood the allure of an effortlessly glamorous blonde with radiant skin. So jealous, in fact, that on a regular basis, she would role play with Howard and pretend they were Robert and Nancy. Now, let me tell you something. To each their own, right? But role-playing as your best friend and her husband to get off because you're so jealous of her, that requires therapy. Mary also has a problem with stimulants, namely Adderall. A few years ago, she went off the rails and it wasn't pretty. So there's this looming threat of her taking too many pills and doing something stupid. But she had been sober for about 6 months. Except now with Nancy's death and all the stress, she buys more Adderall. And Howard isn't helpful either. Like I mentioned that he's pompous and pretentious, but if I haven't, Howard is pompous and pretentious and up his own ass. And he's straight. So you know that butthole stinks because they don't wash their ass. Straight men refuse to wash their butts. And he has an interview for a teaching job in Ohio, which he gets. And when she finds out that he got the job and that there's a possibility that they have to move their entire family across state lines, she's like, oh, wow, that's terrific. And he throws a tantrum. This 40/50-year-old man throws a tantrum because his wife didn't do enough of a celebration over him getting a job in a different state that nobody wanted him to get in the first place. That is terrific. Here comes Caesar returning victorious from battle, parading his men through the forum. And you say, this is terrific? I read that verbatim. That is exactly what he says. Just shut the fuck up. Howard, shut the fuck up. And Mary then hides her Adderall pills inside a mint box and puts the mint box on top of the fridge away from anyone who's too short, like her two daughters. Keep that in mind because it's going to be important. One thing that police are going to do in these limited series is be absolutely fucking useless because they talk to Mary and Howard, and Mary's like, oh, Robert wrote this letter, so he knew about the affair, and Nancy was really scared about him. And there's also this stepfather, Scott, who she was terrified, who used to assault her when she was younger, and we know that he had been harassing her, messaging her nonstop. And the detectives are like, well, that's all good, but we haven't found any evidence of that. We asked him and he said no, so we're looking at you, because they said that you were quite drunk when you left the restaurant. The whole show, they keep telling the police, hey, this happened and this happened. Investigate this, investigate that. Here's clues. Like, here's what happened. And the detectives constantly like, nah, we don't really want to do that because, like, there's an easier path to victory, which is just not do that because we can't be fucking bothered. But Mary continues her investigation at home and then eventually finds in the middle of Nancy's things a ripped page from a poem book. The same poem that Howard gave Mary all those years ago when he was seducing her was the poem that he gave Nancy. She recognizes the poem. The same line is underlined in everything. The same line that says, you will give me 1,000 kisses. Howard, shut the fuck up, you fucking loser. And Mary, like the dumbass that she is, confronts her husband. She's like, why did you give this to Nancy? You gave me the same thing back when we were starting.
Never give men the opportunity to explain themselves because they will absolutely fucking gaslight the shit out of you and make you think that you're crazy or make it seem like you're the guilty one, because
guess what he does? He's like, Mary, your pupils are dilated. Are you on those pills again? Are you going off the rails again? Because last time that happened, it was really not pretty. Do you need me to call help? I'm honestly sick and tired of this trope of the man making it seem like his wife is absolutely fucking crazy, even though she's not. So imagine how tired women are of going through it in real life. Mary starts thinking back to her conversations and her interactions in the past. Like, how did I miss this? And then she realizes it was right under her nose the entire time, and she was just too blind to recognize the truth right in front of her. But then Mary also finds out from her son that her husband wasn't home that night. After he put Mary to bed, Howard just wasn't home. So, like, they're making it really, really obvious that it may have been Howard that has killed Nancy. So I can't wait for the plot twist where the killer is revealed to be someone completely different that we were not suspecting in the first place. That's really going to make this show pop so much. Like, wow, so unexpected. Right? Mary then goes through the blazer that he was wearing that night, and she finds Nancy's ring, the ring that she was wearing, her grounding force. Again, it's getting quite obvious that it was Howard. The funniest thing is Mary can't even be mad at Nancy for having slept with her husband because Mary did the same to Howard's ex-wife when she started sleeping with him. Yes, messy. So Mary drives to Howard's ex-wife's house to confront her or to ask her what the hell happened between the two, because now she's getting suspicious. And his ex-wife is like, well, he was kind of crazy and he was constantly having affairs. And when I found out that he was sleeping with you when you were pregnant, he said that he wouldn't acknowledge the baby if I stayed with him, but I decided to leave him anyway. And he never touched me until the night that I left him. And she has a really deep scar in her leg from when she fell down 2 flights of stairs. So Howard has a little bit of a temper. And he also lied about his ex being crazy because he told Mary that she had tried to slit her wrists. But she's like, no, my wrists are absolutely fine. He's been lying to you. And I would have told you this earlier, but you wouldn't have believed me. And Mary's like, yeah, I wouldn't have. So Howard is a piece of shit. Good. Mary goes to Eleanor and tells her the whole story. And apparently Howard has had affairs before, especially with younger, thin 20-year-olds. He's got a type and he's disgusting. And then Howard calls, interrupting their conversation to say that one of their daughters is in the hospital in critical condition. Eleanor and Mary rush to the hospital only to find out that the daughter swallowed a bunch of pills, Adderall, and now her stomach needs pumping and hopefully she doesn't have brain damage. Howard, you evil piece of shit, because Mary put those pills on top of the fridge in the back. But then she went and confronted her husband like a fucking dumbass, so of course he framed her. Episode 7 rolls in and Mary continues explaining her passion for words and storytelling and how that brought her to Howard. But back in the real world, she is prohibited from having contact with her children until the investigation into these pills concludes. And she finally connects the dots and realizes that her husband framed her because those pills were far too far away from their daughter's reach for either of them to ever be able to reach them. But here he is with a fucking smirk on his face. Not even smirking. I just want to punch him. And Mary once again commits the cardinal sin of telling him to his face, I know you killed Nancy. I know now with all of my heart that you did it. Like, why would you say that to someone you know killed someone before they are caught or arrested? Keep that shit to yourself for now. She then flips out completely in front of like police officers and service workers and everything. It's like she's actively trying to make a worse case for herself. Eleanor has to physically calm her down and be like, stop it. You're making it worse. And Mary tries telling the detectives the entire truth, like what she found out about her husband, but they're not interested whatsoever. They couldn't give a fuck. Eleanor is in the room and they bring out a bunch of items that Howard apparently gave the police, which are items that Mary was supposedly stealing from Nancy's house. And it was part jealousy over Nancy, and it was part being too broke and trying to find valuable items, I think. I don't know, but it's bad. It's really bad. What's even worse is how much these detectives do not give a fuck about the investigation. Because here they have Mary and Eleanor telling them the entire truth. And the detectives are like, actually, no, because you used to steal candles from your best friend's house. Sure. But the most fucked up part about it all is that neither Robert nor Howard are that special. Like, at all. Neither of them moves a fucking needle. Their personalities, garbage. Eleanor's PI and lawyers then get on the case to try and connect Howard to the crime scene somehow, and they find out that actually the person that dragged Nancy's body from the place where she died to the place where they found her was someone that must have had an injury on one of their shoulders. Guess who has a shoulder injury as well? Howard. Yes. So Mary goes back to her home to try and find the medical reports to take to the police, and then Howard is there and he confronts her and he puts the fear of the devil in her. And at first she stands her ground because she understands how dangerous Howard is. But then she panics when she's with Eleanor and she says he's so much smarter than me. He's gonna take away the kids. I'm never gonna see my kids ever again. Eleanor promises her that's never gonna happen. They have time to reconvene in the morning. Now they have to go home and sleep. But in the middle of the night, Mary, too chicken shit to go through with it, goes back to Howard. She goes back to Howard and she's like, I'll be good. I'll shut the fuck up. Yeah, you're afraid of never seeing your kids again. But also, aren't you scared of letting a literal murderer raise your children? The man who can't keep it in his pants, the man who constantly goes after really young women and damages all of them, including killing your best friend, and you want that man to raise your kids. One thing I could defend, Mary going back and poisoning her husband, but going back and being good? Scientology makes y'all weak. And when Eleanor finds out, she's beside herself. She goes to Mary and Howard's house and tries to reason with Mary, but Howard is there and she can, so she's so frustrated. She goes to Roberts and she's like, I know who killed your wife. It was Howard. We need your help. And Robert's dad is there and he couldn't give two fucks about who killed Nancy. He says that enough damage has come to the family. Let's just let this story die down now. Okay. We know who killed her, but let's not do anything in case they do a headline about how bad we are. Luckily, Robert grows a spine and tells his dad, either you call the chief of police, detectives, whatever, and put in a good word and have that man arrested, or swear to God, I will drag this company and this family's name to the fucking ground and bury it forever. So he does. He calls the chief of the detectives, whatever, and they arrest Howard. Problem is, Howard now thinks that it was Mary who did it, even though Mary swears that she didn't say anything. And what do you know? That same night, they issue an arrest warrant for Scott, Nancy's stepfather, because a dash cam of a random car has just placed him near the crime scene the same night. Okay, so maybe it was not Howard after all. There's time for a twist. Right? Episode 8, Howard is released and he takes his daughters away immediately, and Mary is left completely wrecked. So she lashes out at Eleanor because Eleanor is the one who had the police arrest Howard and therefore taken her daughters away. And Eleanor, feeling very distraught, visits her mom, and the biggest waste of talent happens when she visits her mom, and she's played by Cheryl Lee Ralph. And she is in 2 scenes in 1 episode, and such a disservice that she was just in this for like a minute of runtime total on screen. Tragic. But she's like a hard-ass mom until she realizes that Eleanor is really like on the verge of something bad, and she kind of helps her daughter, like gives her some good sound advice, and that's nice. That's good. Cheryl, you get a yay from me. Well, plot twist is Scott is arrested by the police, and he requests specifically to speak to Eleanor and Mary. Bonus points, Scott had Nancy's phone, the phone that the police could not find anywhere. So I'm sure that now they'll be able to go through her phone and find out that she was having an affair with Howard, right? And she was meant to meet him there that night, and they'll surely arrest Howard, right? Right? No. So Eleanor and Mary visit Scott in prison, and he tells them that Nancy had contacted him 5 nights before she died. She then met up with Scott and told him about the affair that she was having and the fact that Howard was not taking no for an answer. He wasn't leaving her alone. So she asked Scott to scare him off, rough him up a bit, get him to leave her alone. And he was going to do it too. He was going to do it that night. He was on his way to meeting Nancy when he got there, and he saw from afar Nancy was already dead and Howard was leaving the body. And instead of calling the police and potentially getting himself incriminated in the crime, he just took the phone and ran away. So it seems like Scott didn't do it and Howard actually did it. But I'm sure there's going to be a plot twist that's going to reveal something else entirely, right? They wouldn't make it this obvious by episode 4 because I'm invested now. I want to know what happens. Don't you? Mary and Eleanor then tell the detective that Scott is telling them the truth. They believe him, and they need to subpoena Howard's phone, Howard's laptop, investigate everything. And the detective looks them in the eye and is like, no, thank you. We have our suspect. It's Scott, and I'm about to tell the public that we have arrested Nancy's murderer, and hopefully she'll get justice. But you two keep doing you. Bye. And this is peak. The detectives were so fucking sick of their shit. She was like, I don't give a f anymore. I don't care who killed Nancy. I just want this all done, put to rest. It's not enough of a mystery for us to be wasting this much time going back and forth on details. And I, for one, kind of agree. But also this sounds like such an easy crime to solve. Like Nancy was having an affair. She must have so much evidence on her phone. If they took Howard's phone and laptop, they could probably also find a lot of the communication. But instead, they were like, no, we don't want to do that. We really don't give a fuck. Mary then has a hearing about her kids, and the judge concludes that they're both a danger for their kids. So Howard is not allowed to take the job in Ohio just yet, and neither of them is taking custody of the kids. Instead, the daughters are going to be placed in a foster care home until the case is resolved. So they're both fucked. And my favorite part was when Howard's ex-wife was called to testify, and she said, all I see is this angry child scared to death of his own mediocrity. You got burned. Can we get a round of applause for the bars this woman just spat on that courtroom? Yeah! And Howard, you man, baby, electric chair. And then comes like the last stretch of the series, which is just so stupid. Howard kidnaps Mary from her hotel room and takes her to the overpass where he killed Nancy. And he's holding her at knife point. He wants to frame it as Mary just went to that place and she decided to take her own life. And Mary's like, I was supposed to meet Eleanor and the detective in my hotel room, and now I'm not going to be there. You really think they're going to believe that I just took my own life when we were about to have a really important meeting about new evidence? They know it was you. Scott saw you. He's told them the truth. All they need is to gather evidence and you're fucked. And she almost convinces Howard to back down and turn himself in or run away. But no, she doesn't. She fails and he continues with the plan. So she calls Eleanor secretly, alerting her to where she is, and Eleanor turns that car around and goes to meet her. And then we see how Nancy actually died. And Nancy was basically telling Howard that she wanted this to be over, and then she was going to tell Mary, because as much as she had betrayed Mary, Mary deserved to know the truth. And Howard just couldn't handle it. And after getting slapped, he pushed her against the wall. She hit her head and died. So it's like Howard is a bit of a bitch, right? A little slap and you kill the woman. You Mary manages to fight back, thank God, and there's a struggle that culminates with Howard on top of her, strangling her. And then he stops strangling her to grab the knife and stab her. But as he's getting the knife, Eleanor runs him over. She then rescues Mary, but then he attacks Eleanor and he starts choking her. And then Mary, in an act of bravery and defiance against the patriarchy and her own husband, stabs him again and again and again, saving Eleanor and finally killing Howard, that absolute. And then, like, the most rushed conclusion of this entire story, Mary is shown with her kids, and Robert is there with Cora as well, all happy. And Eleanor has a new boyfriend, and she's in a yacht with her brother and someone else. And that's it. Happily ever after. I kid you not, the ending of the show felt so rushed. I was like, okay. Credits are rolling. All right, okay. And that's Imperfect Women. An imperfect show about imperfect women with an imperfect story, an imperfect ending. Was there anything that was perfect? Yes. How perfectly awful it was. And it's so funny when you see like someone that you know is a great actor and they are acting their ass off, but you hear the words they're saying and you're like, I don't think this dialogue warrants so much emotion or so much professionalism. I feel like it's being wasted on this script, but it's so messy. I loved it. It's so many like who's sleeping with who, who's in love with who. And they do like this really intentional thing of explaining the emotions and the emotional weight of all these feelings and not acting on them or acting on them. They really frame it as like the humane side of them. I find it very commendable. The show was really, really trying to give all of these characters depth, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the acting. But my God, did it just not work. And that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to leave it a like down below, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and click the bell notification so you never miss a future upload from me. I hope you had fun listening to Imperfect Women, and if you did, yay. And if you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. I tried my best. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, and stay stuttering. Bye, guys. And now for the song that I'm leaving you guys out on. What am I going to sing? Quero destino que eu não creio no destino, e o meu fado é nem ter fado nenhum.